A debt collector stood outside her cabin like death itself. $31,000. 2 weeks to pay or lose everything. Her father was dying. Her mother was breaking. And then, a stranger appeared with an offer that would change her life forever. "I need a wife. You need money. Marry me, and your family's debt disappears." She said yes. She married a man she had never met before that morning. But here's what she didn't know. The poor mountain man who bought her hand was hiding a secret worth more than she could ever imagine. Was she a fool who sold herself for pennies? Or did she just make the smartest decision of her entire life? This is the story of a woman who had nothing and turned it into everything. This story proves that your lowest moment can become your greatest turning point, if you're brave enough to take the risk. True partnership isn't about rescue. It's about two people who see each other's worth and build something extraordinary together. If stories about strong women rising from impossible situations speak to your soul, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Drop a comment telling me, would you have taken his offer? And if this story moves you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. The debt collector's horse stood outside their cabin like a bad omen. Lydia watched Samuel Garrett get down from his horse, a man who had kicked plenty of families off their land. His bag was full of papers that all meant the same thing. You are finished. Her father had built their fence with 14 posts when she was just 7, long before he got sick, and the bills started piling up like snowdrifts, burying everything good in their lives. Lydia saw her mother, Margaret, looking frail and worn down by worry. "How much time did Mr. Garrett give us?" Lydia asked, already knowing the answer was not enough. In her father's room, the air was thick with sickness. Thomas Hale, who was only 43 but looked closer to 70, was wasting away. "I heard Garrett," he whispered, his voice raspy. "Don't talk, Papa. Save your strength." A rough cough shook his body. "For what?" "I am dying, Lydia. We can stop pretending." His hand found hers, surprisingly strong. "I failed you and your mother. I built a life on this mountain, and it turned out to be nothing. You got sick, Papa. That is not failing. A man is supposed to provide," he insisted, his eyes cloudy. "I am leaving you with nothing but debts." Lydia held back her tears. Crying was a luxury she could not afford. "We will figure something out," she promised, though she knew she was lying. She could hear Mr. Garrett's voice cutting through the thin walls. "I am sorry, Mrs. Hale, but sympathy does not pay the bank." Lydia's jaw tightened. "I will handle this, Papa," she said, marching into the main room. Garrett turned, and his eyes sized her up like she was a piece of livestock for sale. She hated that look. "Miss Hale," he said with the tip of his hat, "maybe you can talk some sense into your mother." "How much?" Lydia's voice was cold and steady. "I beg your pardon?" "How much is the total debt?" Garrett pulled out a ledger and smiled. $31,742, plus interest, of course. The number was staggering. It might as well have been $1 million. "If you cannot pay," Garrett said, closing his book with a snap, "I will be back on the 15th of the month with the sheriff. You will have until sundown to leave." He tipped his hat in a mocking farewell and walked out the door. The slam echoed in the quiet room. Lydia stood there, her mind reeling. How could they possibly find that much money in 2 weeks? Just then she heard a second horse approaching, its steps slow and sure. A tall rider dressed like a mountain man got down and walked to their door. Lydia opened it to a man who looked to be around 30, with serious gray eyes that took in everything at once. He had a weathered face and calloused hands. "Miss Hale?" he asked, his voice deep. "My name is Ethan Crow. I have a proposal for you." Lydia's mother came to her side. "Sir, we do not accept charity." "It is not charity," Ethan said, his gaze fixed on Lydia. It is a business deal. May I come in? Against her better judgment, Lydia stepped aside. He entered but remained standing, his back to the wall where he could see everything. I will be direct, Ethan said. I need a wife. You need money. I am willing to pay your family's debts in exchange for your hand in marriage. The silence was deafening. Then he pulled out a bank draft. It was made out for $400, enough to pay off everything and have some left over, to spare. In exchange, you marry me. You will come live at my home up in the hills. Lydia stared at the bank draft. The number on it was $400, more money than she had ever seen. Why are you buying a wife? She asked plainly. You seem like a man who could find one for free. A flicker of a smile touched Ethan's lips. Because I prefer a clear business deal. No false hopes, no disappointments. And what is my part in this deal? You will be a wife. You will manage my home. I need a partner, not a maid. Her mother, Margaret, stepped forward. Absolutely not. This is pure madness. Is it, Mama? Lydia's eyes never left Ethan's. Is it more mad than watching Papa die while we lose our land? Poverty is a danger, too. She turned back to Ethan. I will not go into this blind. I must see your home first. That is not possible. Then the deal is not possible. She held the draft out. He paused, then gave a slow nod. Fair enough. I can tell you this much. The home is solid. You will have shelter and food and your own privacy. I am looking for a partner. A partner for what? For survival, he said. For building something that will last. He left the draft on the table. You have until tomorrow evening to make up your mind. If you agree, meet me at the North Crossroads at dawn the day after. Bring one bag. What about the money? Margaret asked, her voice sharp. The money is hers if she agrees. The debt gets paid, no matter if the marriage lasts. I am a man of my word. As he reached the door, Lydia asked, Mr. Crow, why did you choose me? For the first time, his face softened. I saw you stand up to Samuel Garrett. You have grit. Desperation has made you sharp, not weak. The mountains do not forgive softness. Then he rode off, leaving them with a choice that meant either salvation or ruin. That night, the small cabin was filled with arguments. You cannot do this, Margaret said for the 20th time. Finally, a weak but clear voice came from the bedroom. Let her speak, Margaret. It was her father, Thomas. They gathered in his room. I am not long for this world, Thomas said, his voice direct. We all know it. He took Lydia's hand. I do not know this Crow fellow, but I know you, my girl. You are the smartest and strongest person I have ever known. If you believe this risk is worth taking, then I trust your judgment. Margaret started to protest, but Thomas held up a hand. Lydia looked at her mother. I know this is not the life you dreamed for me, but I would rather face an unknown future with him than watch our family drown in debt. What if he is cruel to you? Margaret whispered through her tears. Then I will leave. The debt will be paid regardless. I will come home. What if there is no home to come back to? For that, Lydia had no answer. After a long silence, Thomas spoke again. If you do this, you do it smart. Keep some money for yourself. Learn the land around you. Make yourself so valuable that he needs you. Remember, a contract works both ways, her father finished. He is buying your help, not your soul. The next day, Lydia packed her one bag. She chose practical things. Her mother's sewing kit, a few clothes, her father's watch. Word had already spread through town like a wildfire. Neighbors stopped by, pretending to be concerned but hungry for gossip. They say he is a hermit, one woman whispered, hiding from the law, or maybe he found gold. They are just stories, Lydia said firmly, not facts. Later, Margaret brought her a package, some food, medicine, and the blue shawl you always loved. Her mother's voice was fierce. You are my daughter, Lydia. No matter what happens, that will never change. They held each other in a long embrace. Lydia Hale was trading her future for her family's. It was a terrible choice, but the only one she had. That last night, she stood by her father's sickbed. "Tomorrow, then," Thomas rasped. "No regrets?" She shook her head. "I'm scared spitless, but I have no regrets." He managed a weak smile. "You're stronger than you know, Lydia girl. You'll do just fine." The next morning felt cold and final. Lydia put on her best dress, a simple blue wool her mother made 3 years back. The woman in the mirror looked the same, but her eyes held a new hardness. This was a woman who had made a choice. At the door, her mother, Margaret, fussed over her hands trembling. "You write to us," Margaret pleaded. "Promise me." Lydia hugged her tight. "I promise, Mama." Her father called out from his room, his voice thin but firm. "Be brave, but not reckless. Be kind, but not soft. Now go on, and don't you look back." She walked away from the only home she'd ever known, and never once looked behind her. Ethan Crow was waiting at the crossroads with 2 horses. He had cleaned himself up, his beard trimmed and wearing a clean shirt. "Miss Hale," he nodded. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I ran out of better options," she said plainly. He almost smiled. "Honesty. I like that." He pulled a paper from his bag. "I had a circuit judge draw this up. It's a proper marriage certificate. A preacher is waiting about a quarter of a mile up the trail with the papers all drawn up. If you're still willing, we can make this legal right now." Lydia's heart pounded. This was her last chance to turn back. She pictured her dying father, her mother's gaunt face, and the debt collector's smug grin. Then she thought of Ethan's steady gray eyes and the money that saved them. "I'm willing," she said. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. The preacher, an old man with shaky hands, asked the necessary questions. "Do you, Lydia Ann Hale, take this man?" "I do. I now pronounce you man and wife." Ethan signed the certificate, then handed the pen to Lydia. Her hand was steady as she wrote her old name for the very last time. She was Lydia Crow now, a stranger to herself. Ethan paid the preacher, then pointed to a smaller horse. "She's yours. Her name is Slate. She's got a good temper, and you'll need it where we're headed." Lydia let the mare smell her hand, feeling a sudden warmth. At least she would have one friend. "How far?" "2 days, if the weather holds," he said. "And where are we going?" "North, into the high country." That was all he would say. "I need you to trust me, Mrs. Crow. Can you do that?" Mrs. Crow. The name felt like a borrowed coat. "I can try," she told him. They rode north toward the jagged mountains. Behind them, the small settlement that had been her whole world disappeared. She did not look back. They stopped once at midday for dried meat and biscuits, eating in silence. "You're not a big talker," Lydia finally said. "I don't care for useless words," he answered. "If you have a real question, ask it." "All right. What did you do before you decided to live alone in the mountains?" His eyes flickered. "I worked different jobs, none of them very interesting." "You're being evasive." "I'm being private," he said, and the tone in his voice said the matter was closed. Lydia held her tongue. She was bound to this man, and starting a fight on the first day was a fool's errand. That evening, Ethan set up camp with a quiet skill that caught her attention. Lydia tended to the horses, and he noticed her gentle hands. "My father raised them," she explained, "back before we lost everything." They ate a rabbit Ethan had shot earlier, so quietly she had never even heard the rifle. Every move he made showed a competence that did not match the simple mountain man he pretended to be. As the cold night settled in, Lydia wrapped herself in a shawl. The fire was a small comfort against the huge darkness. "You should get some sleep," Ethan said. "It's a hard climb tomorrow." "What about you?" "I'll keep watch. It's an old habit." "From what?" He looked at her across the flames. "From learning the mountains don't care if you're tired. They'll kill you all the same." It wasn't a real answer. She lay down in the shelter, but sleep was a long time coming. She kept thinking about the strange reality of being married to a man she did not know at all. They broke camp at dawn and started climbing. The trail grew narrow and dangerous, with a sheer drop on one side. Lydia's knuckles were white on the reins. "Don't look down," Ethan called back. "Trust your horse." She forced herself to relax, and Slate moved more surely beneath her. They climbed for hours, the air growing thin and sharp. Just when Lydia felt she could go no higher, the trail opened onto a high plateau. The view stole her breath. A hidden valley stretched below them, surrounded by snow-capped peaks. Down in that valley, she could see buildings. Real buildings where nothing should be. Ethan stopped his horse beside her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Crow," he said softly. And Lydia knew with a mix of fear and wonder that the poor man she had married was nothing of the sort. The climb into the mountains was tough, but the path down into Ethan's valley was what truly unsettled her. The trail was too well kept, with stone markers and even a carved water channel. This wasn't one man's work. This was a community's. The valley itself was a hidden sanctuary, a place built to be defended. The trees were managed, and a creek flowed between stone banks, its sound masking any approach. This place was designed to keep secrets. "Ethan," she finally asked, her voice tight, "what exactly have I gotten myself into?" He stopped his horse and looked her square in the eye. "A complicated life," he said, "but an honest one. Just hold your questions a little longer." Soon, buildings came into view. First, a massive, well-built barn. Then another, a stable, and a workshop with smoke curling from its chimney. Finally, she saw the lodge. It was a huge two-story timber building with a stone foundation, built to stand for generations. It wasn't a hermit's cabin. It was the heart of a hidden town. As they rode closer, people appeared. A blacksmith, two women with baskets, a young boy with horses. They all stopped and stared, their faces breaking into smiles of relief. "Mr. Crow," the blacksmith called out, "we weren't expecting you back for another week." "Things have changed, Samuel." Ethan swung down from his horse, then helped Lydia down. Even with his hands barely on her waist, every worker stopped and stared. "This here is my wife," Ethan announced to the quiet crowd. "Lydia Crow. I expect y'all to make her feel welcome." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, an older woman with a kind, weathered face stepped forward, a slow grin spreading across her lips. "Well, now, that's news worth celebrating. Welcome, Mrs. Crow. I'm Martha Hayes, the housekeeper." Her handshake was firm. "This place has been a man's world for far too long." Martha shot a look at Ethan. "Though I see Mr. Crow has been as clear as mud, like usual." She turned back to Lydia. "Come on, dear, let's get you inside. The men can handle the horses." As Martha led her toward the Grand Lodge, Lydia glanced back at Ethan, whose expression was impossible to read. The main room was impressive, with a huge stone fireplace and polished wood floors, showing both wealth and comfort. "I've prepared a suite for you on the north end," Martha said, leading her up a solid timber staircase. "Mr. Crow has his own on the south end." The room she opened was bigger than Lydia's whole family cabin, with a four-poster bed and its own private washroom. Martha pointed out a connecting door. "That leads to the master suite, but it locks from both sides. Your privacy is your own." From the window, Lydia could see the entire valley compound sealed off by mountains. "How many folks live here?" she asked. "Depends on the season," Martha replied. 20 in the winter, maybe 40 in the summer. We're pretty much self-sufficient." Lydia had to ask, "What is this place, exactly?" Martha's smile was kind. "That's a story for your husband to tell, but I'll say this, Ethan's a good man. Complicated, yes. Secretive, you bet. But good." A knock came at the door. It was Ethan. Martha slipped out, leaving them alone. He'd cleaned up, looking more like a landowner than a mountain man. "I reckon you have questions," he said. "That's putting it mildly," Lydia shot back, turning from the window. "What is this place?" "It's a timber operation," he stated plainly. My family has holdings all through these mountains. This valley is the heart of it all. She stared at him. You told me you were a poor man. No, he corrected her. I never said that. You assumed it. I wanted to know if you'd marry me for who I am, not for what I own. Anger flared in her chest. So, it was a test? You let me think I was selling myself for nothing just to see if I was good enough for you? No, Ethan's voice was sharp. I never lied. I offered you enough to save your family. I promised you a home. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. Would you have believed me if I had? Lydia couldn't argue. A rich stranger showing up at her cabin would have been run off with a rifle. So you deceived me, she said. I gave you a choice based on facts you could see, he countered. Everything else, he gestured around the fine room, is just extra. And what do you get out of this? She demanded. He looked out the window. My father built this place. When he died 3 years ago, he left it all to me, his only child. But I inherited his problems too. Partners who don't trust me, folks who think I'm too young. Appearances matter. A married man looks stable. He finally glanced at her. I needed a real partner, not some hired actress. Someone from the mountains who wouldn't be scared off or easily impressed. Someone who chose to survive. You barely know me, she whispered. How did you know all that? He met her eyes. I've been watching you for 3 months. I watched you for weeks, Ethan admitted. The confession hung between them like dust in a sunbeam. Lydia stared back at him. You what? He said he needed to be sure. He saw how she cared for her father and managed her mother. He saw how she ran that little cabin on nothing but pure grit. He told her she was already handling an impossible situation, which was exactly what he needed. Lydia did not know whether to feel flattered or furious. You spied on me. He called it doing his research. She demanded a proper written agreement. First, he had to answer her questions with straight answers. Second, she would have her own money. Third, the freedom to see her family. And fourth, this marriage was a partnership. He did not own her. Agreed, he said without a moment of hesitation. After he left the room, Lydia finally sank onto the bed, the day's exhaustion hitting her all at once. The room smelled of pine and clean beeswax. A soft knock came at the door, and an older woman named Martha entered with a tea tray. She figured Lydia might want some comfort and a few answers. Martha poured 2 cups, adding plenty of sugar and milk to Lydia's. She said that Mr. Crow was a good man, but he had been alone for a very long time. His past taught him to be careful and to assume everyone wanted something from him. It was a lonely way to live, but it had kept him safe for years. There are people who would take advantage of him, Martha explained, including his own family. She confessed she had worried he would bring home a wife who only saw dollar signs instead of the man. But she was glad she was wrong about Lydia. You asked for terms instead of promises, she said. It showed that Lydia was practical, and that was what this place needed. Martha told her plainly that she could be a true partner to Ethan, or she could just be a contractual obligation. The choice was entirely hers. She hoped Lydia would stay, not for Ethan's sake, but for her own. There was a real place for her here if she wanted it. Later, Lydia found her new quarters included a large copper tub and even a small library of books. Someone had thought carefully about what she might need. A young woman named Anne came to draw her a bath, shyly insisting on calling her Mrs. Crow. Lydia then understood the new weight on her shoulders. She had real status here now. These people would look to her for direction. After her bath, she dressed and went downstairs to face her new household. Ethan was at his desk and several of his men were in the main room. When she entered, every single man stood up. Ethan introduced her to his entire crew, from the foreman to the loggers. The responsibility of her new life felt as real as the wooden floor beneath her feet. The men around the dinner table talked shop about timber and machinery. Lydia mostly just listened, trying to get the measure of the place. When things got quiet, she asked, "How much timber do y'all process in a year?" The men looked to her new husband, Ethan. He nodded. "It is all right. She has a right to know. He told her, around 500,000 board feet, give or take. The crew lived there year-round, but more hands were brought in for the harvest season. So what happens in winter? Lydia asked. Maintenance, Ethan said. And this year we have other challenges. The men at the table suddenly got real quiet. What kind of challenges? She pushed. Business challenges, he said, shutting the door on the topic. It was a kind but firm dismissal. Lydia knew the tone. She was tired and did not want to fight, so she let it go for now. After dinner, Martha showed Lydia around the kitchen. That night, in a bed far too big for one person, Lydia listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the valley. She thought of her family, hoping the money she sent had paid their debts and given them some breathing room. She also thought about Ethan, the wealthy stranger she had married. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Lydia learned the compound was like a small, self-sufficient town. There was a barn for the horses, a workshop, a smokehouse, and even a small dairy with 6 cows. The workers were polite but kept their distance. Ethan was always busy, either out checking on his crews or locked in his office. He was courteous but distant, and Lydia felt like a guest in her own home. On the 4th day, a rider brought a message from Denver. Lydia watched from the porch as Ethan read the letter. His jaw tightened. He looked like a man bracing for a fight. Tell them I will be there in a week, Ethan told the rider. And tell them my answer has not changed. After the rider left, Ethan stood in the yard with a dark look on his face. Bad news? Lydia asked. He looked up, surprised to see her. Complicated news. It is from my uncle. He paused, then made a decision. Actually, this concerns you too. You ought to know what you are walking into. He waved for her to follow him into his office, a room she had never seen before. Inside, Ethan explained. My father had 2 brothers, one passed on. The other, Marcus, is very much alive. He told her how Marcus had contested their father's will and lost, but never accepted it. What does he want? Lydia asked. Control, money, revenge, Ethan said flatly. He has been spreading rumors and trying to undermine my business. Now he is demanding a big meeting in Denver with all the investors. He wants to put me on trial, Ethan said, and claim I have been mismanaging everything. When is the meeting? She asked. In 10 days. That means we leave in 3. We? Lydia asked, surprised. I need you there, Ethan said. A married man looks more stable. I want you to be yourself, sharp, observant. That will mean more than any act. He looked her straight in the eye. It is your choice. I will not force you, but I am asking for your help as my husband and your partner. The word partner hung in the air between them, full of unspoken meaning. Lydia thought about the life she was building with this complicated man. She decided she wanted to be more than just an obligation. All right, she said. I will go, but you have to do this right. Tell me everything about your uncle, the business, and what I am walking into. No more surprises. Ethan looked relieved, maybe even a little impressed. Deal, he said. We start tomorrow. I will teach you about the timber business and the particular brand of trouble my Uncle Marcus brings. The next morning, Ethan's office looked like a war room. He had a giant map spread on a table covered in red, blue, and green marks. This is the Crow timber operation, Ethan explained. My father spent 30 years building this. He started with just a borrowed wagon and turned it into the biggest independent timber company from Denver to San Francisco. Lydia studied the map. How many folks work for you? Directly, about 200. But with suppliers and mill workers, another 300 people depend on us. He pointed to the marks. We have 5 big operations, and my uncle wants a piece of it all. He thinks being family gives him that right, even though he never lifted a finger to help build it. My father left him out of the will for a good reason. What reason? Ethan paused. Marcus has a gambling problem, a bad one. My father bailed him out twice, but the 3rd time he said no more. Marcus saw it as a rejection. So this meeting is his chance for revenge, disguised as a business opportunity. If he can make me look bad in front of our investors, he might force his way in. He would bleed this company dry in 2 years and blame me for it. Lydia looked at the contracts. Who are these investors? 3 main ones, Ethan said. Harrison Wells needs our timber for his railroad. He values stability above all else. Lose him, and we lose 40% of our money. Then there is Margaret Chen. Her family is in mining, and she is shrewd. She makes up her own mind, and her opinion carries a lot of weight. Last is Richard Blackwood. He represents new money from the East, always looking for the next big thing, but quick to run if things look shaky. So, Lydia summarized, Wells needs stability, Chen wants competence, and Blackwood is looking for potential. Marcus will try to make you look like you have none of those things. Ethan stared at her. That is exactly right. He will say I am too young and that I am making reckless decisions. Are you? She asked. I am paying better wages and using safer equipment, he said. I am choosing sustainability over short-term profit. The old guard does not like it, but this way we will have a forest to harvest 20 years from now. My father built this company, but I'm trying to build something that will last. Lydia saw him differently then. He was not just a rich man. He believed in what he was doing. Your uncle will use that against you, she said. He will call it weakness. I know, Ethan said. That is why I need proof that my way works. I have the numbers, but Marcus is good at twisting facts. Then do not defend your choices, Lydia advised. Present them as the only right choices. Make him look foolish for suggesting anything else. She pulled up a chair. Show me the numbers. They spent the next 6 hours going over everything. By evening, Lydia understood the business as well as anyone. You are a fast learner, Ethan said. Lydia nodded. I am motivated. This is my life now, too. She paused. One last question. Why did you really need a wife for this meeting? Ethan hesitated. Because Marcus has been telling everyone that I am too strange, that no decent woman would ever have me. Ethan laid it out plain and simple. Having a wife wasn't just for appearances. It proved he was building a future, not just minding a legacy. The 4-day journey to Denver was harder than a week of Mondays, but Lydia stayed quiet, watching everything. She saw how Ethan handled strangers and how folks sized them up. During one stop, he smiled at her. I am starting to believe I misjudged you, he said. Most people do, she replied. It has always been my advantage. Denver was a shock after the quiet mountains, a bustling city of 30,000 people with streets and tall buildings. It felt like a whole other world. At the Grand Windsor Hotel, just saying the name Crow changed everything. The clerk, suddenly full of respect, showed them to a fine suite. Ethan made it clear she would have her own space. This is a partnership, not ownership, he reminded her, a promise that meant more in the city than it did back in the mountains. He then took her to a dressmaker, buying her new clothes. This is not a dress, he told her. It is armor. Do not give my uncle an opening to make you feel small. The night before the meeting, their lawyer, Lawrence Porter, came to the hotel. They talked strategy for 3 hours, while Lydia listened from a corner. When they discussed how Ethan's uncle, Marcus, would make things personal, Lydia finally spoke up. Do not defend yourself, she said simply. Each time he attacks you personally, answer with a business fact. It will make him look petty. The lawyer stared at her, then broke into a slow grin. Mrs. Crow, you should have been an attorney. After he left, Ethan poured them both a whiskey. He raised his glass. To our partnership. Are you worried? She asked him. A little less now that you are here, he admitted. As they walked into the meeting the next day, the air was thick with tension. Marcus Crow stood at the head of a long table, looking confident and smug. His eyes landed on Ethan with pure contempt. Nephew, he boomed across the room. I was worried you had forgotten about our little chat. Ethan stood tall beside Lydia, his face calm. We are 10 minutes early, Marcus, he said, his voice steady as a rock. You? Up in the mountains, you lose track of time. Marcus eyed Lydia with a calculating stare. And who is this lovely lady? My wife, Lydia, Ethan stated plainly. Lydia offered her hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Crow." Marcus held her hand a moment too long. "Wife? Well, now, that's news to me. This was almighty sudden, wasn't it?" "We like our privacy," Ethan said. Before Marcus could pry further, a silver-haired official called the meeting to order. They all sat, with Ethan and Lydia on one side and Marcus's crew on the other. 3 big-time investors sat at the head of the table like judges. The official got straight to it. "Mr. Marcus Crow, you called this meeting. State your case." Marcus stood. "My brother built this company from scratch. When he passed 3 years ago, he left it to my nephew, Ethan. But I've watched as poor judgment has started to tear it all down." The official prompted him. "Be specific." "Gladly," Marcus said. "He's changed logging methods, hurting our profits. He's alienated partners, and he's shown he's not fit for the social duties that come with this job." "And your solution?" the official asked. "Simple. Appoint me as a managing partner to handle the real decisions." The commissioner turned to Ethan. "Your response?" "I would," Ethan said, standing tall. "My uncle is right that I've made changes. What he calls inefficiency, I call sustainability. We're ensuring this land will provide for us for years to come." Richard Blackwood, one of the investors, asked, "Can you prove that?" "I can show you the numbers," Ethan said, producing a ledger. "Our profits are up 4%, and we have extended our harvest timeline from 15 years to 40. Margaret Chen, another investor, seemed impressed. "Do your contracts support this?" "They do," Ethan confirmed. Marcus jumped in. "He's damaged relationships. Harrison, tell them." Mr. Wells, the third investor, spoke slowly. "We had a disagreement on price. But young Mr. Crow was right. His proposal was fair for the long term." Marcus, getting desperate, turned his attack on Lydia. "And what about his sudden marriage to a woman with a background we know nothing about?" Lydia placed a hand on Ethan's arm and stood herself. "Mr. Crow, you're right. You don't know me. Let me tell you. I come from a poor mountain family," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I married your nephew because my family needed help, and he needed a wife who understands what it means to survive. It was a business arrangement, something I figure you'd appreciate." Marcus was stunned silent. Lydia continued. "I've spent every waking moment learning this business. You question my background, sir. I question your motives. This ain't about concern. It's about being bitter that your nephew has succeeded where you always failed." Margaret Chen broke the silence. "Mr. Marcus Crow, what is your business experience exactly?" "My father bailed him out of failed ventures twice," Ethan said quietly, producing another folder. "He cut you from the will because he knew you'd run this company into the ground." Marcus looked around for support but found none. Ethan addressed the investors one by one. "Mr. Wells, I provided 3 years of stability." Wells nodded. "I am satisfied." "Mrs. Chen?" The businesswoman smiled. "More than satisfied. I'm impressed." "Mr. Blackwood?" The younger man stood and shook Ethan's hand. "Count me in for any expansion you're planning." Marcus knew he had lost. "In 5 years, you'll see this all collapse." "In 5 years," Ethan said, his voice like iron, "we will still be here. You, Uncle Marcus, will have to find another way to pay your gambling debts." The word struck Marcus like a slap. He turned and stormed out of the room. The official declared the matter closed. The investors crowded around Ethan and Lydia, ready to talk about a bright future, one built on honesty and hard work. "That was perfectly done," Chen told her softly. "Marcus thought you would be either too scared or too clumsy. But you used his own attack to show how weak he really was." "I only told the truth," Lydia replied. "Telling the truth at just the right time in just the right way," Chen said, "is a real skill. Do not ever think it is not." After everyone was gone, Ethan looked at Lydia in the quiet conference room. "You did not have to do that," he said. "You did not have to stand up and defend me." "Yes, I did," she answered. "We are partners. That means we fight our battles together." He watched her for a long moment, a new understanding in his eyes. "I was wrong about you," he finally admitted. "When I came to your cabin, I thought I just needed someone capable and practical. What I found was someone truly special." A warmth spread through Lydia's chest. "Do not give me too much credit. I only said what needed to be said." "That is exactly what special people do," he told her, offering his arm. "Now, I promised you a celebration, and I intend to keep that promise." They walked out of the building and into the bright Denver afternoon. Lydia felt like a great weight had been lifted off her shoulders. They had won. They had proven that a girl from the mountains could hold her own. As Ethan led her toward the finest restaurant in the city, she realized their arrangement had changed. It was no longer just a business contract. It was a true partnership, built on respect. Their marriage may have started as a deal, but it was growing into something real. The celebration dinner was wonderful, just as Ethan had promised. But in the middle of their meal, a messenger delivered an envelope. Ethan's face grew serious as he read the note inside. "What is it?" Lydia asked. "It is an invitation," he said, handing it to her. "From my Aunt Caroline, Marcus's wife. She wants us to come to a dinner party tomorrow night." Lydia looked at the fancy handwriting. "This is a trap." "Without a doubt," Ethan agreed. "Marcus lost today, but Caroline is dangerous in a different way. She has connections all over town." He tapped his fingers on the table. "She will want to test you, to find the weaknesses she thinks Marcus missed. Should we say no?" "If we do," he said, "they will call it fear. Caroline will spread rumors that my new wife from the mountains is not fit for polite society." He looked straight at her. "I am sorry, Lydia. I wanted to go back home tomorrow, but we have to go." "Then we will go," Lydia said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You taught me the timber business in 1 week. How hard can one dinner party be?" Ethan's smile was thin. "You would be surprised." The next morning, they prepared. Ethan took Lydia shopping and bought her a green silk gown that cost more than her father had earned in a whole year. The dress was beautiful and elegant. A woman at the shop spent 2 hours showing Lydia how to walk and sit in it. "Remember," Ethan told her later, "Caroline will try to make you feel small. She will ask questions about your family and your upbringing to embarrass you." "Do not let her get to you," Ethan continued. "What should I do?" Lydia asked. "Just be yourself," he said. "The woman who faced down Marcus did not apologize for who she is. Do not start now." That evening, as Lydia got ready, she looked at the woman in the mirror. With the expensive dress and the jewelry Ethan had loaned her from his mother's collection, she looked like a stranger. But underneath it all, she was still the same person who had scrubbed floors and married a stranger to save her family. She touched the small pin at her throat, the only piece that belonged to her own mother. "Do not forget who you are," she whispered. The Crow Mansion in Denver was enormous. It was 3 stories of stone and glass with gas lamps lighting the long circular driveway. "I thought this was a small family dinner," Lydia said as their carriage pulled up. "Caroline's idea of small is different from most people's," Ethan replied, helping her out. The entry hall was packed with at least 40 people, all in their finest clothes, looking confident and rich. A string quartet was playing in a corner. "Stay close," Ethan said quietly. "I know you can handle yourself, but you do not have to do it alone anymore." Just then, Carolyn Crow appeared, gliding toward them with a smile that never reached her eyes. She was a beautiful woman of about 45, wearing a fortune in diamonds that glittered in the gaslight. "Ethan, darling," she said, kissing the air beside his cheek. "And this must be your new bride." Her eyes swept over Lydia, taking in every detail. "My dear, what an interesting dress. It has a certain country charm." "Thank you," Lydia said, her voice steady. "I have always believed that true elegance lasts longer than passing fashion." Caroline's smile tightened for a second. "How philosophical. Now, where did you say your family was from?" A small mountain town. You have probably never heard of it. How quaint, Caroline said. And what does your father do? He was a rancher, Lydia said, telling a small lie to make things simpler. He passed away after Ethan and I were married. My condolences, Caroline said, though she sounded anything but sorry. Before she could ask more questions, another woman in a purple gown joined them. Caroline, you simply must introduce me to the mysterious bride everyone is talking about. Of course, Caroline said. This is Mrs. Helena Ashford. Her husband is a judge. Helena looked Lydia up and down. So you are the one who finally married Ethan Crow. We all thought he would be a bachelor forever. How on earth did you manage it? I did not manage anything, Lydia replied simply. He asked, and I accepted. But there must be a story, Helena pushed. Was it love at first sight? Lydia felt all the eyes nearby turn to watch her. She knew this was the real trap. If she claimed it was love, they would see the lie. If she admitted it was a deal, they would call her a fortune hunter. It was practical, she said, her voice clear and strong. Ethan needed a wife who understood mountain life, and I needed... I said that an honest agreement was more romantic to me than pretty lies. After a moment of silence, Helena let out a genuine laugh. Well, I will be, she declared, an honest woman in Denver. Caroline, wherever did you find her? At dinner, I found myself next to a kind woman named Mrs. Patricia Newcomb. She noticed I was new to eating oysters and gave me a friendly tip. They are an acquired taste, dear. Do not feel bad if you do not like them. I tried one and said it was different but not bad. Mrs. Newcomb smiled. You are doing just fine, she whispered. These dinners are meant to make people feel small. Most of these folks are just as nervous as you. They just hide it better. Her advice felt like a secret shared between friends, and it helped me get through the evening. Mr. Whitmore turned to Lydia, his voice dripping with condescension. He asked what a mountain girl thought of Denver, expecting her to be overwhelmed. Lydia looked him square in the eye. She said that while Denver was impressive, calling mountain life simple was a mistake. She explained that surviving in the wild required a whole set of skills most city folk lacked. Mr. Whitmore huffed, asking if she thought city people were less capable. Lydia replied that different places just required different talents. Then Caroline, her husband's aunt, attacked from the head of the table. She asked in a loud voice how much schooling Lydia had before marrying her nephew. The whole table went quiet. This was about putting Lydia in her place. Lydia calmly stated she had 6 years of formal schooling. After that, her father taught her from his own library, and her mother taught her business. She admitted it was not a fancy education, but she could think for herself, which was more than some could say. Caroline was not done. She insisted Ethan's business must be too complex for Lydia. Lydia just smiled. She said it took her about a week to learn the entire timber operation. A man down the table choked back a laugh. Caroline's face turned red as she snapped that understanding was not the same as managing. Lydia agreed, explaining that Ethan manages the business while she supports him. It is called a partnership, she said, which is how most good marriages seem to work. To Caroline's horror, a woman seated nearby spoke up, saying Lydia's approach sounded far more sensible than most marriages she knew. Defeated, Caroline quickly changed the subject, pointedly ignoring Lydia for the rest of dinner. Her message was clear. She had made an enemy. Lydia knew Caroline was already her enemy. Now at least the woman knew she would not be an easy one to beat. After dinner, the women gathered, and Lydia was circled by their questions. One lady asked if it was true she married Ethan in less than a day. Lydia admitted it was fast, but said they were honest with each other from the start, which was a better foundation than some long, fanciful courtships. Another woman, older and with sharp eyes, studied her. She said Lydia was remarkably honest, not pretending to be madly in love like most young brides in arranged marriages. Lydia simply said that polite lies cause more trouble than they are worth. The older woman smiled and extended a hand, introducing herself as Margaret Chen. She said she had come to the party just to meet Lydia. Margaret told her she had good instincts and a strength that most of the privileged women in that room could never understand. Margaret then lowered her voice and asked Lydia and Ethan to visit her office the next day to discuss a business proposition. Just then, Caroline appeared, asking Mrs. Chen if she was enjoying the party. Margaret said she was, calling Lydia a delightful partner for Ethan. Caroline's smile was ice. She said she was surprised Ethan had not chosen someone with a more appropriate background. Margaret's eyes went cold. She asked, "Appropriate for what?" She said Ethan needed a real partner, not a social decoration, and that Lydia was perfect for the role. Margaret then turned to Lydia, confirmed their meeting for 10 o'clock the next morning, and swept away. Caroline was left fuming as the other guests whispered about the exchange. Later in the carriage, Ethan asked how bad the evening was. Lydia said his aunt had tried to make her feel small, and she had refused to let her. Then she told him about Margaret Chen's invitation. "To meet tomorrow. She's got a proposal for you." Lydia rested her head against the seat. "Ethan, is every party in your world a polite battlefield?" He sighed. "Only the ones with my family. It is exhausting." She admitted, "Completely. I would rather face 10 angry creditors." He smiled. "You handled yourself well. I saw Caroline's face when you stood your ground. It was a first." Lydia gave credit where it was due. "Mrs. Chen helped. Her kindness was a surprise." Ethan nodded. "Margaret only shows kindness to those she respects. Her interest in you means something." He paused, then took her hand, a warm and solid gesture. "Thank you for standing with me, for not running from this complicated life." She squeezed his hand. "Where would I go? Besides, I am too stubborn to let Caroline Crowe win." They rode the rest of the way in a comfortable silence, a new layer of their partnership settling into place. At Margaret Chen's office, there was no fancy decor, just a functional space with a large desk and maps on the walls. "I do not care about impressing folks with furniture," Margaret stated plainly. "I put my money where it grows," Margaret said, pouring them tea. "Let's be direct. I was impressed with you two at the meeting, especially how you work together as a team." "Thank you," Ethan said. "Where's this going?" "My mines have the same trouble you had. My men want quick profits, but I want long-term growth. I need advisors who get that." She paused. "I want to hire you both as consultants. The pay is substantial." Ethan looked interested, but cautious. "Why both of us?" "You know the business side," Margaret stated. "But your wife, she understands survival. She knows how to manage when resources are thin. That kind of thinking is priceless." "I do not know anything about mining," Lydia admitted. "You will learn, just like you learned timber," Margaret said with a smile. "Mrs. Crowe, I do not make offers like this lightly. You have a rare kind of courage." Lydia felt a warmth spread through her, the feeling of being truly seen. "We would need to discuss terms," Ethan stated. "Of course. Think it over," Margaret said as she stood. "I hope you will accept." Outside, Lydia felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. Just weeks ago, she was desperate. Now, she was being hired for her own skills. "So?" Ethan asked. "I am terrified," she confessed. "I do not know if I can do what she is asking." "I do," he said firmly. "I watched you defend our business against hostile men without flinching. You are more than capable. The question is whether you believe it." She thought about the woman she was becoming, a woman who could hold her own. "I want to try," she finally said. "I want to see what I can be when I stop holding myself back." Ethan gave her a real warm smile. "Good," he said, "because I want to take Margaret's deal as actual partners. Equals." 3 days later, they came back to the valley carrying new contracts and a brand new understanding between them. The mountain air felt good and clean after the city. That night on the porch, he found her watching the sunset. "Thinking about how much has changed," she said. "You don't have to go back," he told her gently. "That's the point." He hesitated, then added, "Lydia, this started as business, but I hope it can become something more." Her heart beat a little faster. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a start. "I'm willing," she said softly. "Let's see what we can build together." Lydia had come to the mountains with no options left. Now she was shaping her own life instead of just getting by. She knew there would be more fights ahead, but for the first time she believed she could handle whatever came her way. That belief changed everything. Winter came to the valley like a hammer that year. A big snow in late October, 3 weeks early, covered everything in 2 feet of white. Lydia woke up to a world sealed off until spring. She stood at her window, watching folks dig paths. In the months since Denver, the valley had truly become her home. A knock came on the connecting door to Ethan's room, a door that had stayed locked for a long time but was now opening more and more. "Come in," she called out. Ethan walked in holding a telegram, his face serious. "It's from your mother." Lydia's hands trembled as she read the short message. Her father had passed on peacefully. The debts were all cleared. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly, offering to get her through the closed mountain passes if she wanted to go home. Lydia surprised herself with her own answer. "No, my place is here now. My father would understand. He always valued being practical." What she didn't say was that this valley felt more like home now than the one she had left. A letter arrived 2 weeks later. Her mother's words brought peace. Her father had been proud of her, proud of the strength she showed. He wanted her to be happy and build her new life. Lydia read the letter, cried for the girl she once was, and then went back to work. The long winter meant that 23 people in the valley had to depend on one another. Lydia found she had a real talent for managing things. She organized meals, set up a small library, and just kept spirits high. "You're good at this," Martha the cook told her one evening. "It's a gift." Ethan noticed it too. Soon he was including her in all the big decisions for the logging operation. Their evening meetings became a regular thing, but it was turning into more than just a partnership. It was in the small things, like his hand on her back as they walked, or their fingers brushing when they passed papers across his desk. Late-night talks by the fire became their routine. "Tell me about your mother," Lydia asked one night. "She died when I was 12, Ethan said, watching the fire. She was the kind one. My father only cared about the business. After she was gone, he taught me how to run an empire, but not how to be a person. Is that why you moved out here?" "Partly. I was hiding from it all. Then I realized I had to face it, and that is when I found you." "You were not hiding," she corrected. "You were preparing." He smiled, a real smile. "You think so?" The air between them felt warm, comfortable. What started as respect was turning into real affection. "Ethan," she said softly, "this marriage is better than I ever expected." He reached over and took her hand. "I agree. I thought I was getting a practical deal. I found a partner instead." "I thought I was just getting a way to survive," she said. "Instead, I found a purpose. And you." He stood, drawing her up with him, and gave her their first real kiss. It was tender and full of promise. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he said softly. "Then why did you not?" "Because I needed you to choose this freely. To choose me." "I choose you, Ethan," she said, "because I want to." They held each other by the fire, two strangers who had found a home together. Spring arrived, and so did Margaret Chen, ready to start the consulting work. "This is quite an operation," she remarked from the porch. For the next week, they toured the timber sites. Lydia found her voice drawing parallels between the sustainable practices of forestry and the needs of mining, contributing more than she ever thought she could. A fresh viewpoint on sustainable management. "Here is what I do not get," she said, looking over a logged area. "You both want the most value from a site, but what about the land's future value? If you destroy it for a quick profit, you lose everything it could give you later." Ethan explained, "That is the long-term view. Investors want their money now, not in 20 years. Lydia countered, "Then show them the cost of that short-sighted thinking. This forest section will be ready to harvest again in 15 years. A clear-cut area will not be useful for 50. That is the real cost. Margaret was impressed. My foremen talk about respecting the land, but you are framing it in pure economics. Money motivates everyone. She looked at Lydia. You should write this down as a formal proposal for my board. Lydia glanced at Ethan, who nodded in support. All right, I will. For 3 weeks, she poured all her energy into the proposal. She researched and calculated until her argument was airtight. The whole household seemed to rally behind her. When she presented the document, Margaret read it carefully. This is excellent work, she said. You have made a case that even the biggest skeptic could not ignore. Margaret leaned forward. Mrs. Proctor, I would like to offer you a permanent job as a consultant for my company. This would be your own contract, your own income. Lydia was stunned. Are you serious? Margaret replied, completely. I need people who think differently. Lydia looked at Ethan, who was smiling proudly. It is your choice, he said, but I think you have earned this. Turning back to Margaret, Lydia accepted. Yes, I will take the position. That handshake was a turning point, transforming her from a timber baron's wife into a respected professional in her own right. Later, a letter arrived from Carolyn Crowe. As Ethan read it, his face shifted from dark to grimly satisfied. What is it? Lydia asked. Marcus is being investigated for fraud, he said. He was selling fake mining claims. Caroline wants us to publicly condemn him to protect the family name. The letter reeked of desperation. Caroline's letter was a mix of careful words and veiled threats. What will you do? Lydia asked. Exactly what she wants, Ethan said with a sharp smile. Marcus has no connection to our business, and I want that on the record. But I will not do it in the pleading tone she expects. They drafted a simple, factual statement and sent it to the Denver papers. The news of Marcus's arrest, alongside their statement, damaged Carolyn's social standing. Lydia felt a sense of justice, but no joy in the woman's downfall. By midsummer, the valley was thriving. The logging operations were successful and sustainable, and Lydia's consulting work was changing the industry. One bright July afternoon, her mother, Margaret Hale, arrived for a visit. She looked older and more fragile than Lydia remembered. As she looked around the beautiful hidden valley, she breathed, Lydia, you did not tell me it was like this. Lydia smiled. I was not sure you would believe me if I tried. It is better to see it for yourself, Lydia told her mother. Over the next 2 weeks, Margaret saw the successful operation and the strong partnership between Lydia and Ethan. One evening, Margaret told her, Your father would be so proud. Not of the money, but because you took a hard situation and made something good from it. Are you happy, Lydia? Truly happy? Her mother asked. Lydia thought about the struggles of her past and the purpose she had now. I am happy, she answered. I am building something real with a man I respect. That is more than most people get. And you love him, Margaret added. I do, Lydia confirmed. It is not a fairy tale love, but something deeper. It is the kind of love that lasts. Her mother squeezed her hand, content. That is the best foundation of all. Lydia suggested they start a training program. We can teach other folks our methods, she said. It would bring in money that does not come from cutting down trees. Ethan loved the idea and started sketching out a plan right away. They were excited to build something that could change the whole industry for the better. By the fall, they had opened the Crow Institute for Sustainable Resource Management. Their first class had 6 foremen who came for 2 weeks of training. Lydia discovered she was a natural teacher, explaining things in a way everyone could understand. A foreman named Tom Walsh told her, I have been in this business for 30 years, but I never thought about things this way. You make real sense. The classes were a success, and soon the institute was known as the best place to learn. Marcus's trial ended with a 5-year prison sentence and financial ruin. Caroline left Denver in disgrace. The family that tried to tear them down had destroyed itself. Caroline sent Ethan one last bitter letter. She still does not get it, Lydia said, reading over his shoulder. This was never about winning. Ethan agreed. Some people only understand fighting. They cannot imagine building something together. He tossed the letter into the fire, letting the past burn away. When winter came again, Lydia felt like she was truly home. She was no longer a stranger, but a partner in a life she loved. One snowy evening, Ethan came into their bedroom, where the connecting door now always stood open. "Come to bed," he said softly. She turned to the man who was once a stranger, who had offered her a deal that became a life, and who saw the strength in her all along. "You recollect what you told me when you proposed, don't you?" she asked. "You said honesty was better than romance, that a straight-up business deal had no room for false hopes." "I remember," he said, knowing now how wrong he'd been. She continued, "My point is, you were right and wrong all at once. Honesty and clear expectations are vital, but you were dead wrong that they crowd out love. We built our love right on top of that honest ground, and that's what makes it so strong." He crossed the room and pulled her in close, resting his chin on her head. "I reckon you've become a philosopher," he murmured. "I'm just a woman who learned that the detours in life are often better than the destination you had mapped out." Lydia then looked up at him. "I want my mother to come live with us. She's all alone in that cabin." "Well then, bring her home," Ethan said without a second's thought. "This is your home as much as it is mine." She turned in his arms. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything, Ethan. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did, and for believing in me," she said. He shook his head. "You saved me, Lydia. You saved me from a lonely life I didn't even know I was living." And so spring came again, and with it Margaret Hale, who settled into a small cottage nearby. She quickly became the heart of their growing community. The Crow Institute they founded became a wild success. In just 2 years, they'd trained over 40 managers and even published a textbook on doing business the right way. Lydia's name was right there on the cover next to Ethan's, an equal partner in every way. The timid girl who had married a stranger to save her family was long gone. In her place stood a confident woman who could teach seasoned businessmen a better way and build something that would last. But she never once forgot the struggle that started it all. She started a fund to help families buried under the same kind of medical bills that nearly broke her own. 5 years after that desperate wedding day, Lydia stood on the porch, 7 months along with their first child, a little girl. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked softly. She smiled, shaking her head. "Not a single one. Every hard day, every fight, taught me who I could be. It showed us what we could build when we stood together." She took his hand and placed it on her belly where their daughter was kicking. "This life, our daughter, our work, none of it would be here without every single one of those hard choices." "You're a remarkable woman," he said, kissing her temple. "I'm just stubborn," she replied with a grin. "You're both," he said, "and I'm thankful for it every single day." As the sun set, Lydia Crow, once a poor girl with no future, looked out over the empire of fairness and opportunity she had helped create. She hadn't just married a man who turned out to be rich. She had married a true partner who saw her worth and helped her claim it for herself. Together, they had built something that would last for generations. Their hidden valley was no longer a secret. It had become a beacon, a place where people came to learn a better way to build a life. And at the very center of it all stood Lydia, a mother, a wife, a leader who had started with nothing more than raw courage and ended up with everything that truly mattered. She had not been given this life. She had chosen it and fought for it. She built it piece by piece, with every hard decision. As they walked back to the warmth of their lodge, the valley settled into a peaceful evening. It was a good life, a life worth fighting for. And Lydia, who once wondered if hope was even worth the trouble, had proven that it absolutely was. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.